Hello everyone and welcome to another JavaScript Mastery video. Would you prefer your components to look like this and this? Or would you rather prefer something that looks much cleaner, more modern, and concise like this? In this video, with the use of custom hooks, I'm going to teach you how to make your components efficient and easily understandable, all while building a real-life project. Stay tuned. Yes, this is the project we'll be making, a random GIF application. It's a funny application, but it's not about the project. It may seem silly, but in this case, we're gonna learn a lot about custom hooks, in-depth React, reusing logic, and making our applications much more efficient. Why did I choose to explain such a hard topic on such a silly application? Well, these didn't have to be GIFs. They could be any random data we are fetching from different APIs. In this case, I chose this one because we have two different endpoints. One for the random GIF, as you can see, if I click it, I get a random GIF, and one for a GIF with a search query. So in here, I can switch from dogs to cats, for example, and I can generate new cat GIFs. That's it, as you can see. So why this? Well, in this case, we're using the same API, and both of these requests are really similar. So there will be a lot of code duplication. To prevent that, we're going to use custom hooks. This is a great project to learn how custom hooks work. And if you learn how to write custom hooks, you're going to be in a minority of React developers. Not a lot of React developers know how to use custom hooks. The first thing we're going to do is create a new empty folder called GIF_app, just like that. Then you can open an empty Visual Studio Code window and drag and drop our GIF app. That's going to open the project right there. Then you can open the terminal window by pressing Ctrl backtick, or you can simply head up to the view and then terminal. In there, you can type npx create-react-app./ This is going to initialize a starter React application right inside of your GIF app folder. Great, this is done. As you can see, our React app is generated. We have a lot of boilerplate code in here. We won't need most of that. So what I usually like to do with Create React App is to delete the whole src folder and recreate it from scratch. So I just deleted it, and then we can create a new folder named src. Inside of there, there's one file that we absolutely need to have. That is the index.js. This index.js file is the only real connection between our React application and real index.html. Inside of here, we can do import React from React, and we can also do import React DOM from React-DOM. Then we're gonna import app from /app. We didn't yet create that. We're going to do it in a moment. But for now, let's do React DOM.render. And then in there, we're going to render that app component. Our whole application is going to be inside of there. And then in here, we can choose document.getElementById. And then that has to be a string of root. We're targeting that div with an ID of root. Great, now that that is ready, we can create our app.js file in the src. That is going to be a simple functional component. So inside of here, we can do import React from React. Const app is going to be equal to a functional component. And don't put curly braces here. We're going to put normal parentheses because we're going to have an instant return. Inside of there, we can create a div. And inside of that div, simply put an h1 that says random GIF application. Okay, now what we need to do is export default app. With this, our application should be ready to start. Just before starting our application, we're going to install one thing, npm i, and that's going to be Axios. We are going to install Axios so that we can make API calls more easily. Once that is done, you can run npm start to start your React application on localhost 3000. And there we go. If you open localhost 3000, you should see at the top left, random GIF application. Now let's go back to our code and import some styles. just below the import React from React, we're going to type import /app.css. We didn't yet create this file, but we're going to do that right now. So in the src, you can create a new file, app.css. Since the point of this video is not for you to learn CSS, I'm going to give you all the CSS code right in the description. As you can see, I just pasted it here. You'll be able to go down and just find all the CSS files and simply paste them there. That's it. Now, if we save this, we should go back to our application and see that something is at least different. And there we go. Just by copy and pasting these styles, our application is at least visually so much nicer to work on. Right now, you can close this terminal because we're not going to need it anymore, and you can create a new folder in the src folder. It's going to be called components. In there, we're going to have two different components. First one is going to be called random_v1.jsx. So this is going to be our first version. And the second one is going to be called tag_v1.jsx. So this is going to be finding GIFs by a tag. Now we have the files for two components ready. Let's create two simple arrow function components. Import React from React. Just below, const tag is going to be equal to an arrow function. And in there, for now, we can simply type return. And there we can have a React fragment. So that's going to be like an empty div like this. And we can say an h1. And then inside of that h1, we're going to simply say tag. Great. Now below that, we're going to export default tag. Now you're going to copy this whole thing and paste it over to the random v1. In there, the only thing you have to change is tag to random 3 times. If you do that, we are now ready to import these components inside of our app.js. We can do that like this. Import random from /components/random. Just like that, but it has to be random v1. You can copy this line and then simply change random to tag, just like this. That's good. Now below this heading, we're going to create a div. That div is going to have a class name of main-container. And then inside of there, we're simply going to render these two components. That's going to be random, and we are also going to have tag. Great. With that said, let's see how that looks in the browser. Don't forget to save all files. As you can see, if we go back, we have these two new components ready. We can start working on them right now. First, we're going to start with a completely random GIF. So I'm going to close all the tabs, and then I'm going to open random v1. To be able to fetch GIFs, we have to have the API key for the Giphy developers app. That's right there. I'm going to paste this link in the description. That's developers.giphy.com. In here, you can really easily click Get Started, create your own account, and get your API key. The only thing you have to do in here is click Login or register with any of the options provided, and then you'll be able to click Create an App. After you click Create a new app, you'll be prompted with this little window, and you can click Select API, and then click Next Step. In here, you can type something like GIF app, enter a description, and then check this little checkbox and click Create App. Once you do that, you're going to see your apps, and just below, you'll be able to see GIF app. You can copy the API key you received, and then let me show you what you need to do with it. We're going to head back in here, and then you're going to create one file in the root of your directory. It's going to be called .env. env stands for environmental variables. So as soon as we create that, in there, you'll be able to safely store your API key. You can call it like this: react_app_API_key. Then you can put the equal sign and string signs, and then in there, you can paste your own API key, just like so. I'm going to paste mine right there and then leave this file. Great. Now we saved our API key in the env folder, and we have to find a way to retrieve it right here in our component file. To get the API key, we can do something like this. Const API_key is equal to process.env dot, and then in there you can say react_app_API key. This is going to populate your API key. With that, we are ready to start making API requests. With the default import of React, we are also going to import some named imports. That's going to be useStateHook as well as the useEffectHook. I would dare to say that these are two most important hooks in React. We want to fetch the data as soon as the component mounts. For that, in functional components, we use the useEffect. useEffect accepts two parameters. One is a callback function, and then the second one is called a dependency array. If the dependency array is left empty, then the whole useEffect acts as a component did mount, meaning it only happens initially on the first render. So I'm going to say that first render. In there, we can do something, and that something is going to be API data fetching. So we have to import Axios from Axios, and now we have to make an Axios.getCall. Inside of there, we have to put our URL, and that URL is going to look like this. Const URL is equal to https api.giphy.com version 1 gifs random and then API key like this. I'm going to leave this line in the description so that you can more easily follow along and simply copy it. With that, we have our URL, and then I'm going to simply paste it here. Now, Axios.getCall returns a promise. So this is a promise, and we have to somehow get the value out of that promise. For that, we can use an asynchronous function. So right in here in the useEffect, I'm going to create an asynchronous function called const fetch GIF. And that is going to be equal to an async arrow function, async. And in there, we're going to put everything that we have so far, const URL, and also Axios.getURL. Why did we do that? Well, right now we can put an await in front of this Axios.get and simply store it in a variable. So in here, we're getting the response, and then what we can do is simply destructure the data outside of that response. So now let's see what we are getting. Console log data. Okay, if we save that, of course, we also have to call our function. So just below, we're going to call our fetchGIF function. Let's save it and see how it looks in the browser. Looks like we're getting an error right there, and I think I know what could be the problem. We can go back in here and open the terminal once again. When you add the .env file, you have to restart your server. So right there, I'm going to press Ctrl+C to exit it and then run npm start one more time to see if that's going to make a change. And there we go. As you can see, as soon as we refresh one more time, there we have our data, and that data contains all the information about our GIF. Great. And I know that some of you might be wondering, why even create this function if you're immediately calling it here? Why not simply delete that and then declare the useEffect as asynchronous? But unfortunately, that's not going to work. As you can see, if you save that, React says effect callbacks are synchronous to prevent race conditions. Put the async function inside. So we definitely do need to have another function, and they even give us an example. Async function fetch data and then call it down there exactly like we did. So that is something you absolutely need to do if you're fetching the data from the API inside of your useEffect. This is a quite large block of code that's not so easy to remember. What I like to do with these kinds of snippets is simply copy them, go back in my browser, and head to the mem.dev website. It's really simple to use. The only thing you have to do is log in and then paste that snippet right there. I'll head to the Create New Card button, and then in here, I'll simply paste my block of code and choose the highlighting. That's gonna be JavaScript in our case. And what we can do is simply highlight the things we want to learn. But first, let's generalize it a bit. So it's not always going to be fetch GIF. It's going to be just fetch data. So I'm going to just change this to fetch data and fetch data right there. Then what we can do is remove this URL because we don't need to care about that. I remove that. We only care about how do we actually fetch the data. So this is how we do it. We have a function, and then we can have a function call where we are fetching the data. So what is the thing you want to remember? Well, you can highlight anything you want. For example, let's highlight how to make this function. We can also highlight the whole thing, and you can even highlight the entire useEffect. Now I'm gonna say I just learned how to use async useEffect, and I'm gonna save it. And our snippet of code is saved. Now tomorrow morning, when I continue practicing JavaScript, I'm gonna head to memdev and then it's going to prompt me to train on that same snippet until I fully remember it. That's it. I do that with all kinds of snippets. With that said, we can actually continue with coding. Let's see what's inside of the data. Well, if you head to Chrome, in the console, you can see that data is the huge object with lots of things inside of it. The thing that we need is going to be data.data.images and then downsized large. So we have to get that. Let's do it right now. We're going to store that in a variable, const image src, and that's going to be equal to data.data.images.downsized_large.url. Now let's console log that to see if we correctly stored it. As you can see, there is the URL to our GIF. Let's go back and see what do we want to do with it. There's no use in simply console logging it. What we want to do is set it to the state. So I'm going to create a new state field at the top. In there, const GIF and set GIF, and that's going to be equal to use state, where we're going to pass in an empty object. Or since it's going to be simply a URL, we can pass in an empty string. And then in here, line 17, we are simply going to call set GIF, and we're going to pass in the image src. That's it. Now we have access to this GIF in the state, and we can use it down below in our JSX. So how is our JSX going to look like? Well, we're going to have a div. Inside of the GIF, we're going to have an h1 tag, which is simply going to say random GIF, just like that. And down below, we're going to have an image. Image is going to have the width of 500, so you can set the width to 500. And it's also going to have an src set to GIF, and it's also going to have an alternative tag, which is going to be equal to random GIF or GIF. That's it. For now, that's enough. Let's see how that looks like in the browser. I'm going to save it and head back. There we go. As you can see, we get a random GIF. Now what we want to do is add a button that's going to recall that same API call. So let's do that right now. To do that, we're going to create a button tag, and inside of there, we're gonna say click for new, just like that. Of course, this is a button, so it needs to have an on-click handler or on-click listener, and then in there, we're going to call a function called handle click, just like that. We didn't yet create that function, but we're going to create it right now. In here, I'm going to create that function called handle click. And in there, there's only one thing that we want to do. Basically, the same thing we're currently doing here. So first of all, it wouldn't make sense to simply copy and paste all the code. What we're going to do is we're going to take this fetchGIF function outside so that we can reuse it both here and here. I'm going to copy the fetchGIF function, take it outside, and now I can paste it in here at the top. Const fetchGIF. We are using it right here, but we're also going to be using it right here below in the handle click. We're calling the same thing, getting the new GIF and setting it to the state on the click as well as initially. Okay, now let's save that. If you head back, you should see a button right now, and when you click it, you should get a new GIF, and that works perfectly. I see it's not perfectly styled, so the only thing you have to do is add a new class name here, and that class name is going to say container. Now, if we go back, it should look better. There we go, it's centered, and we have the button just below. As you can already see, there's too much happening in regards to logic. React components should be simple. They should only be returning some JSX. And as you can see, in regards of JSX, this component is fairly simple. It has 4 lines, but what's cluttering it is the logic. So we have to find a way to bring this logic outside of this component. But before we do that, let's also implement the tag function. So the tag functionality for getting different GIFs by a tag name, not just at random. To prove my point that there's going to be a lot of duplication, we're not going to start creating this component from scratch. We're going to take our whole random v1 component and we're going to copy it, all of it, and then paste it right here. We're going to continue from this thing because it's going to be really similar. The only real difference we have to make is in here, add a new state field for the tag we want to search for. So you can say tag and then say set tag and then use the state and initially set it equal to an empty string. Then just below, you can say random. We can use the tag, random tag GIF. So this is going to be, for example, random cats GIF if you search for a cat. And then the only thing we need is going to be an input because we have to select our tag. So input is going to be a self-closing tag. It's going to have a value of a tag, and it also has to have the onChange listener. The onChange is going to have a callback function where we get an event, and then it's going to be an instant return where we're going to set the tag to be equal to e.target.value. What we're doing here with this onChange is we are registering all key presses and then we are simply setting them to the tag. So if we type A, B, C, then the value of tag is going to be ABC. Great. With that, let's see how we can make an API call, not only random, but also to a certain specific tag. To do that, our fetchGIF function is going to accept a tag, and then we have to make use of that tag in the URL. The only thing you have to do to the API to change it is add an end sign and then say tag is equal to a template string tag. There we go. You can see we just added this little part. I'm going to paste this link in the description also so that you can use it. Now in here, the data is not going to be for the random GIF, it's going to be for a tagged one. That's great. Now you can see our fetchGIF function accepts one tag, one parameter, but we are not passing any. So now we can use this tag property and pass that over in both of our function calls. That's going to be right here on the handle click, but initially we don't have it. So initially we don't have any tag selected. So what we can do is we can specify an initial one. Let's do dogs. Great. If we now save that, let's see if it's going to work. If we go back to the browser and close this, you should see that we have random GIF. And looks like our tag is not populated here, so let's see what's happening. We are only setting it in here, but what we want to do is rather immediately set it in here. So in here, we're immediately going to set the value of our tag to dogs. If you now save that, in here only pass the tag. Let's see what's gonna happen. If we go back, you can see random dogs GIF, and then in here pre-populated dogs, but we can now change that to cats. As you can see, we get cats, and you can also click for new, which is going to generate a new cat GIF. Great. This means that the functionality of our application is now fully done. What we're going to do now is the main part of this video. We're going to take all of this duplicate code, a lot of the logic, we're going to simplify it from this component and also from this component to make something concise, nice looking, and efficient using custom hooks. First thing that we're going to do is create a new file in the src folder. In here, we can create our custom hook, and it's going to be called usegif.js. All hooks must begin with the word use. At least that's what the React team says. To start, I'm actually going to copy all the logic from the tag v1 file right in the usegif. Let's start by copying, again, the whole thing. So the whole file, I'm going to immediately copy it and paste it into the usegif. Inside of here, let's get rid of some things that we won't need. For example, we definitely won't need the JSX that stays in the components. What else can we do to simplify it? Well, let's bring our URL to the top. So I'm going to extract it right here, just below the API key. And then I'm going to remove this tag part, at least for now. I'm going to remove that there. Great. And then this is not going to be a const random component. This is going to be a function. More specifically, it is going to be a usegif function, just like that. It's going to accept one parameter, and that parameter is going to be tag. So if there is a tag, we're going to send it over as a parameter. That means that we don't have to keep track of it here. So I'm going to delete this line, and we're just going to keep our state GIF. As you can see, even though this is a custom hook, we still are using the use effect and the use state hooks. We are allowed to use built-in hooks inside of our custom hook. But we are not using React, so we can just do it like that. You can see our usegif function is not being used, so the only thing we have to do is export it just below usegif. Export default usegif. Great. So what do we have to do to make this custom hook work? Well, first of all, you can see we are not returning anything. So what do we actually want to return? Well, we're going to return a GIF like that, right? We want to use that GIF that we have here in the state. Our function for fetching GIFs is still the same, but you can see we have the tag here that is not being used. So inside of here, we're going to make it dynamic. And how do we make it dynamic? Well, we can use a ternary operator. So inside of here, we're going to say if there is a tag, then the URL is going to be equal to the URL, and then end sign tag is equal to tag, just like that. Else, the URL is simply going to be equal to URL. That's it. Now we have the dynamic URL, which is going to work for both when we have the tag and when we don't have the tag. And then we set that GIF to the state. As you can see, our use effect stayed the same. It's still fetching the GIF with the tag in there if we do have it. And then finally, we won't have the handle click right there, so we can simply get rid of that. Now we can save that, and that should be it. We created our custom hook. It has the GIF in the state, it has a function for fetching GIFs, and then finally, it fetches GIFs immediately at the start of our application. But we don't only want to fetch GIFs immediately, we also want to fetch them on click. For that reason, we are not only going to send over the GIF, we are rather going to send over an object that's going to contain GIF, and it's also going to contain the fetch GIF function so that we can use it from our components. That's it. Our custom hook is ready. Now, how do we make use of it? To make use of it, we're going to create two new components, random underscore v2.jsx and also tag underscore v2.jsx. Inside of there, let's again create simple arrow function components. So import React from React, const tag is equal to a function. In there, we're going to have a return, and we're going to return the same JSX as we're returning in the tag one. But for now, let's leave it like this. And finally, export default tag. Great. Now we have to take some things from the tag version 1. We're not going to take a lot of things, but we do have to take the use state. We also have to get the handle click, and we have to get the JSX. So let's start with our use state. In here, I'm going to take that and simply paste it in here. Then I'm going to import the use state because we are using it. And what we have to take is also going to be simply the handle click and the whole JSX. So I'm going to copy that right now. With that, I'm going to paste it here, and that's it. You can see we're still missing the GIFs and the fetch GIF. But if you remember correctly, these two things are the exact things we are exporting from the custom hook we've created. So to get to that, we have to import that custom hook, import use GIF from .. and then that's going to be use GIF. Now we can use it as a hook. We can say const, in there we can put a GIF, but we have to use object destructuring because we exported those from an object. And then we have the fetch GIF, and that's going to be equal to use GIF, where we're gonna pass in our tag. That's it. And if you save it, that should be good. We can even simplify it forward to move this into one line, or even simply take the value out of it and instantly put it in here. Because of that, we don't even have to have the handle click. So now let's copy this whole thing from tag version 2 and let's move to random version 2. I'm gonna paste the entire thing right there. And the random version 2 is going to be even simpler. We can remove the use state right there. We don't need the state because we have no tags. And then we simply need GIF and the fetch GIF. And that's it. Everything else is the same if you remove this tag right there. And in this case, we don't have the tag, so the only thing we'll be doing is simply fetch GIFs. So you can remove this whole thing and simply say fetch GIF. Random doesn't have an input and also doesn't have this tag right there. And that's it. If you save it, you can see how simple this component looks like. It just has all the necessary JSX, and it's immediately telling you, I need the GIF and I need the fetch GIF function, and give me those from the use GIF custom hook. Same thing with the version 2 of tags. I need the GIF, I need the fetch GIF, I'm controlling some kind of state there, and I'm passing that state over to the use GIF. Give me some GIFs back. That is it. Now, if you save that, let's see, does that actually work? There we have it. Random dogs GIF, as you can see. Click for new. We're getting some nice looking dogs GIFs, and we can also change it for cat. There we have it. And you can click new for random GIF as well. That is it. You just learned how to create custom hooks to make your code more readable and more efficient. By the way, the complete Path to JavaScript Mastery course is soon going to be released. With it, I'm also planning on releasing a lot of React courses. These React courses are going to be focused on building certain projects. They're going to be really in-depth. If this sounds like something that interests you, make sure to sign up for the mailing list to be sure not to miss the courses when they come out. With that said, thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one.